Though it is not a national park, Monument Valley, as its name indicates, was decreed a national monument in 1958. This high-altitude desert, stretching out over 120 square kilometers, is administered by the Navajo Native Americans who named it the Valley of Rocks. Located at the border between Utah and Arizona, it is a remarkable natural site due to its geomorphological formations that sometimes rise over 500 meters high. From the eroded plateau, there remains today only remnants of mounds composed of stratified schist, sandstone, and silt. Their lively colors originate from the iron oxide and manganese that they contain. Monument Valley offers a world-renowned panorama, especially with its famous pair of mittens completed by the Merrick Butte. The first two blocks display the silhouette of a pair of hands with apparent thumbs. They are made up of three main rock layers. Schist at the bottom, topped by sandstone. And at the top, the last sedimentary layer, which has been disintegrating and crumbling over time. The mittens, accompanied by the Merrick Butte, form a triangle, one of the most famous panoramas in the world. While men saw, or believed they saw, recognizable shapes in this desert, other formations are less evocative. A bit of imagination is necessary to name them. Like here, the Elephant's Rock. Its silhouette stands out more or less clearly according to the hour of the day. These three peaks here were named the Three Sisters. These three peaks were originally linked to the neighboring mountain range. But erosion ate at the more friable rock and isolated the Three Sisters from the main block. Within the park, there are Native American dwellings that can be visited. They remind us that here we are in Navajo territory. 250,000 of their descendants still live here today, all around the desert. They named some of the rocks, whose shapes represent an animal, a person, or symbolizes their history. Monument Valley was made popular during the golden age of American Westerns. The movie director John Ford favored the setting and shot 10 notorious Westerns, including the very famous Stagecoach in 1939, with a young actor named John Wayne. The list of movies and advertisements shot here since is truly never-ending. It is understandable that so many were enchanted by this red desert, where strange silhouettes rise up and play with the light. The natural forces of wind and water eroded the soil during the last 50 million years by cutting out, ripping out, and wearing down the plateau's surface. The alternating soft and hard rocks slowly revealed the natural wonders which stand today in all their glory. These masterpieces of sandstone generally stand at a height of 100 to 300 meters. They stand out against the blue sky, constantly dotted with white clouds, whose shadows tranquilly roam around the desert shapes. The sacred site of Totem Pole displays a surprising shape which stretches over 130 meters high. Artist Point is undoubtedly one of the most beautiful points of view in the park. Not well known, this overlook presents the visitor with a huge stretch of desert, with the monolith of Monument Valley in the background. At sunset, the landscape imposes upon the visitor not only by its beauty, but also by its size. The fragile rock pinnacles are surrounded by plateaus, which are called mesas here, and buttes. The sand is dotted with rare grasses and bushes. Everything blends together harmoniously and makes Monument Valley unforgettable.
The Royal Château of Fontainebleau is principally in Renaissance and Classical style and is located 60 kilometers southeast of Paris. Several kings have left their mark in the construction and history of the chateau. It is therefore now a testimony of the different periods of the history of France since the Middle Ages. A strategic place in the history of France, from Saint Louis to Napoleon III. Under Francis I, the Château de Fontainebleau integrated a mixture of Italian style and French tradition, notably manifest in the architecture and the interiors. This specificity was the fruit of a king who wanted to make a new Rome out of Fontainebleau, and how, to this avail, invited Italian artists to refurbish Fontainebleau, thus influencing French art. The first major works undertook under Francis I and after completion of the Golden Gate was to unite the medieval chateau and the church under reconstruction. It was in this chapel that later on Louis XV was married and Napoleon III baptized. Francis I was a pious man. In order to walk every morning under shelter from the chateau to the chapel to attend Mass, he decided to build a gallery. The Great Francis I Gallery. Measuring approximately 60 meters long and 60 meters wide, it was then a sheltered bridge, benefiting from open bays on each side. During this lavish period, the court often attended fancy dress receptions. During the parties, a table of honor was set up on trestles near the grand chimney place. The dinner over, the tables were removed and dancing started. This grand idea, inspired by the Italians, demonstrated the end of the lavish Francis I period. Later, Henri IV enlarged the chateau by adding several wings. He played, for example, a jeu de paume game in a room specially fitted for it, rearranged the cour des offices, and realigned the cour ovale, renowned for its irregular shape. The palace could from then on accommodate approximately 1,000 guests. For ostentation's sake, he had the Baptistière Gate built. In those days, a new generation of artists, French and Flemish, worked on the interior decoration of the chateau. It's known as the second school of Fontainebleau, following the first one developed under Francis I and consisting more of Parisian artists. "80 meters long and 10 meters wide, the Galerie de Diane was decorated with scenes of the Diana and Apollo myth. Anne of Austria, the wife of Louis XIII, took in charge the redecorating of the chateau, making the apartments cozier and more welcoming. Later, Louis XV, who married there on the 5th of September 1725, had a leisure room, which unfortunately burnt down in 1856. Louis XV and Louis XVI did not reside often in Fontainebleau. They visited annually, converting it more into a comfortable autumnal palace. Napoleon brought Fontainebleau back to life from 1804 onwards. He decorated it in a neoclassical style and had his court here. Indeed, a chateau is a place for political decisions. This is a period of the glory of battles, of treaties and conquests. The prestige of the old regime fully satisfied the monarch. The French emperor liked this residence, and he was so invested in it that a museum dedicated to him was opened in 1986. It contains close to 15 rooms of the former Louis XV wing. It's a tribute to the emperor, retracing his life, and contains the famous painting of him with his coronation attire painted by François Gérard in 1805. Napoleon's chamber retained most of the Louis XVI style: chimney place, woodwork panels, and decorations in the door alcoves. His addition could be found in his victories, bees, and imperial figures. The furniture is Empire style, with notably a bed made by Jean-Baptiste Rode. There was an Italian clock with 10 faces in the antechamber. It shows the hour, the days of the week and their corresponding signs, the date, the months, the phases of the moon and the sun, the equinoxes, the leap years, and the signs of the zodiac. However, the reign was coming to an end. It was here at Fontainebleau that the emperor signed his abdication act on April 6, 1814. After vainly having attempted to commit suicide and before leaving for exile in Sainte-Hélène, Napoleon pronounced a famous speech to the old guard in the courtyard. The courtyard where it was delivered is named after that event, La Cour des Adieux, the courtyard of farewells. But Napoleon had died in exile, and meanwhile in Paris, after several ups and downs, the Restoration arrived. The royalty returned in 1830. Then Louis-Philippe, the last French king, started renovation work in order to continue the tradition. Fontainebleau would not be a chateau without its vast 115-hectare park made up of different varieties. Diane's garden to the north of the chateau, built by Catherine de' Medici, owes its name to the fountain created in 1684. The grounds, or main garden, or again the King's Garden, was created under Francis I, re-outlaid under Henry IV, and then redesigned under André Le Nôtre in the 17th century. An authentic museum and keeper of our history, The Fontainebleau Château is well and truly the house of the centuries, named this by Napoleon I, evoking in this way the historical memories which this place is steeped in.
The royal city of Angkor is shaped like a square with sides that are around 3 kilometers, surrounded by an 8-meter-high wall. In the middle of each of the 4 walls of the enclosure, there's a monumental gate decorated with immense faces of the 4 great kings of the Hindu pantheon. Each gate has a corresponding causeway that spans the moat. The one that leads to the south gate is guarded on each side by 2 rows of 54 giant statues, the yaksha. To the right, there are the devas, who are the benevolent gods. And to the left, there are the asuras, who are the demons. It is time to leave the Temple of the Bagan to explore the rest of the site of Angkor Thom. Aside from the 4 gates facing in the 4 cardinal directions, there's a 5th gate, the Victory Gate, which leads to the royal palace. The square is topped with 2 richly decorated terraces, which are the access to the royal city. On the left, to the north, there's the Terrace of the Leper King. And the main one, the Terrace of the Elephants. From this terrace, the king could salute and honor the armies returning from their campaigns. The Terrace of the Elephants spans over 300 meters in length, and its height, depending on the section, is between 3 and 5 meters. These strongly carved, high-relief elephants that decorate the stairs gave it its current name. Numerous harnessed and mounted elephants form the bas-relief hunting scenes that decorate a great length. A large platform accentuated with lions is where the king stood. There is also a balustrade in the form of a naga, the giant serpent, which is supported by 54 gods and 54 demons, symbolizing the churning of the sea of milk. To the left, the Terrace of the Leper King, a symbol of death, was once dedicated to cremations. On this terrace, the god Yama decided who would go to heaven or hell. Shaped like a U, a wall runs along it, which is covered with the most beautiful bas-reliefs and Khmer art, representing the Hindu pantheon. Hinduism descends from the Vedic religion, which was the religion of the Aryan invaders who came from the north in the 2nd millennium BC. Its source lies in the 4 Vedas, which are sacred books whose name means knowledge. Then these texts were completed by 2 great epic poems, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, which recounted the exploits of the deities. The Hindu pantheon is very vast. Hinduism is called the religion with 33 million gods. But all these gods are reunited in the three main gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, who are the three aspects of divine power: creation, preservation, and destruction. And their qualities are complemented by those of the multitude of gods in the Hindu pantheon. Further away, still on the grounds of the royal palace, the Bafuan, called the Golden Mountain, was built around 1060 to the glory of Shiva. It stood on the summit of an artificial hill, but had practically disappeared beneath the vegetation before being cleared and consolidated in many stages by the French school of the Far East during the 20th century. This immense mountain temple is a 5-level period with 150-meter sides and consists of 300,000 sandstone blocks weighing 500 kilograms each of them sculpted and unique. Very damaged, its levels have galleries that overlook the jungle. In the 15th century, the temple underwent major changes to its structure in order to build a gigantic reclining Buddha on the second level of the rear face.
Recife is the 9th biggest city of Brazil and was founded in 1537. In the district of St. Anthony, the Church of Our Lady of the Deliverance was renovated in the 19th century. The church has a classic colonial design and its tower rises 25 meters. The interior, well renovated and full of gildings, exhibits a beautiful iconography devoted to the Holy Patroness. The Basilica of Carmel was built in 1665. Following the Rococo style, its facade is decorated with statues and sculptures representing this religious order. Inside, the gilded decor of the choir is priceless, with its extravagant altarpiece. It is topped by a huge fresco of Our Lady of Carmel. The 12 richly decorated lateral altars are among the strong points of this basilica, in particular that of Our Lady of Candelaria and that of Saint Teresa. The marble decoration is typical of the 18th century. On the upper level are balconies that were reserved for the notables and the worthy donators. Republic Square is a beautiful shaded square in the city of Recife. It is flanked by the government palace and the courthouse. Built in the 1920s by the Italian architect Giacomo Palumbo, who trained in Paris, the courthouse facade displays 2 allegorical sculpted ensembles representing justice and law. The building is topped by a monumental dome. The government palace, with its Greek-style columns, is an example of the neoclassical architecture that was widespread in the 19th century Brazil. The St. Isabel Theatre owes its name to the Queen of Portugal. It too is from the same period and in the same style. A 100-year-old baobab was planted in front of the theater. It may have inspired the French writer Saint-Exupéry when he passed through Recife before writing The Little Prince. Just behind the square stands a religious complex that includes many churches and a monastery, including the Church of St. Anthony of Recife. Inside, the single nave is in Rococo style. The altarpiece displays a great crucifix surrounded by Corinthian columns, and on the right stands St. Anthony. But this jewel of Baroque Rococo is nothing compared to the oddity on the left. The dazzling golden chapel, created in 1697, clearly evokes the golden age of the religious orders in Brazil. Its interior decor reveals a striking amount of gilded statues, arabesques, and finely sculpted coils. The Franciscan monastery behind it is one of the oldest standing buildings in the city. It dates back to 1606. Beyond its historical importance, it carries great artistic interest with its azulejos. The great blue faience panels present different scenes illustrating biblical episodes, like the flood, for example. In town, St. Joseph's Market is the main market in Recife. It is set in an iron-covered market building, the first of its kind in Brazil, imported from Europe in 1875. Its surface area of 3,500 square meters is devoted to foodstuffs, but also offers a large selection of artisanal crafts at prices that defy the competition. Recife contains other traces of history, like the synagogue located in the city's historical district. Built in 1636, it was the first synagogue to be established in the Americas during the Dutch domination of northeastern Brazil. After the decline of this domination, the Portuguese gave the Jewish population 3 months to leave the city. So they left to settle in North America, in the district of New Amsterdam, which later became New York. Of the original synagogue, today converted into a Jewish cultural center, there remains a wall in which believers leave their written prayers in the cracks, much like the Wailing Wall of Jerusalem. The historical district located near the port contains Marco Zero Square, which is the starting point of the city's foundation. Major changes were carried out in this district and on the square, and the French-style buildings were magnificently restored. Founded in 1537 by the Portuguese, seized by the Dutch 100 years later, then re-annexed to Portugal, Recife has always been a major port city, exporting wood and sugar to Europe, a main hub between the Old and New World.
Salamanca's new cathedral is a little older. The work began in 1513 and lasted 250 years. Salamanca's new cathedral is a little older. The work began in 1513 and lasted 250 years. The main facade is abundantly detailed and decorated with numerous Renaissance elements with a medieval influence. The great arch of the main entrance is splendidly sculpted and shows an irreproachable finish. This richness is a good definition of the Spanish Plateresque style that assimilated the Italian Renaissance, adapting it to a truly Spanish art. Relief carvings display scenes from the Nativity and the Epiphany, and the Virgin Mary is enthroned above the two doors. With a rectangular layout that is around 100 metres long and 50 metres wide, the cathedral is made up of 3 naves with chapels between the buttresses. In a highly classical manner, the choir is separated from the rest of the space. The main altar, made during the second half of the 18th century, includes a large tabernacle framed by silver urns that contain the remains of 2 saints, one of whom was the patron saint of the city. Facing the altar in the middle of the nave, the choir is occupied by 2 rows of wooden stalls, the upper level of which has panels decorated with full-length depictions of Christ resurrected, the apostles, the saints, and the Virgin. This is the work of several artists and took more than 10 years. The cathedral has twin organs, a Baroque one and another one that is older. To the back of the stalls, thus facing the public, an altarpiece encloses the choir by giving structure to the back of it. Like the choir, it was built according to the plan of the Churriguera brothers, who were architects and sculptors with strong ties to the Spanish Baroque. The dome, located 60 metres above the floor, was rebuilt in 1765 in the neoclassical style, after the original collapse due to the earthquake of Lisbon in neighbouring Portugal. The ceilings of the 2 transepts also feature monumental coverings which, while they're inspired by late Gothic, nevertheless possess Baroque decorations. The interior of the structure is bathed in natural light thanks to the 90 bay windows originally from Flanders, each one showing a biblical episode. The side aisles are bordered by 18 chapels that enrich the cathedral by offering creations in different styles. Indeed, several Spanish or Flemish masters worked here, accompanied by masons, sculptors, painters, blacksmiths, and goldsmiths. The Chapel of Our Lady of the Truth was founded by the Bishop of Salamanca for his family. The Gothic altarpiece is topped by a crucifix, painted in 1630, the year of his death. To the side, his tomb and those of the people close to him. Another chapel contains a magnificent altarpiece dedicated to St. Anthony. The Chapel of Our Lady of Solitude contains an altarpiece by Alberto Churriguera, showing the Virgin who generates a profound devotion in Salamanca. It's regularly taken outside for processions. The Chapel of Christ of the Battles contains a beautiful Gothic statue of the Virgin of Carmen. Here as well, the altarpiece that contains the crucifix is the work of Alberto de Churriguera. His work here has a rare exuberance. In the northern transept, another chapel contains a statue of the Agony of Christ, sculpted in the 16th century. This statue also enjoys a great admiration from the people of Salamanca. The Golden Chapel is the oldest one in the cathedral. It was created at the same time as the main building. Its main altar is presided over by a magnificent Calvary that is beautifully multicolored and covered with gold. The walls of the chapel are richly decorated with statues of the apostles and the saints, in the middle of which there is a representation of death that is striking in its ferocious realism. There are also beautiful, very primitive tombs, including the tomb of the founder of the cathedral, surmounted by a Madonna of the People. Images of Adam and Eve are accompanied by the patriarchs. The construction of this cathedral, popularly called the New Cathedral, was financed by the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand and Isabella, who had liberated Spain once and for all from the Moorish invasion.
Bagan, formerly called Pagan, is a vast Buddhist archaeological site that is nearly 50 kilometers squared. The site is located in an earthquake zone, and it has suffered many earthquakes that caused serious damage. 2,834 constructions are numbered on the site, many of which are in ruin. On the site, there are two major types of monuments. Circular in shape, the stupa is a full construction. It is both a symbolic representation of the Buddha and a monument commemorating his death, with a relic buried in its center. And there are the temples of varying dimensions and shapes. The temples are topped with finely worked towers which make them visible from afar. The most famous cross-shaped temple is undoubtedly the Ananda. Built by King Chichen in 1091, it was originally devoted to the infinite wisdom of Buddha. The construction of this temple signals the king's adoption of Buddhism, which he then promoted throughout Burma. Having been severely damaged in the earthquake of July 8, 1975, it is currently being restored. The rooftop is made up of 6 successive terraces, topped by a very fine Indian-style sanctuary tower, covered in gold and peaking at 55 meters. All the elements of the rooftop are very elaborate. Legend has it that the king was inspired by the description of Indian temples that a monk architect from India presented him with, which explains the Indian architectural motifs on the Ananda. After the monk completed building the temple, it is said that the king, in order to preserve the temple's unique character, had him killed, to ensure that he would never build a similar structure. A variation of the legend said that the architect was buried alive to serve as a guardian spirit. The temple has a square shape with 4 portals before it. Then, 4 corridors lead to the central core, where 4 niches each contain a standing statue of the Buddha, facing the 4 cardinal points. Facing west is Gautama Buddha, with hands outstretched in a gesture of intrepidness. Facing south is Kassapa Buddha. In fact, there are thousands of Buddhas, for immortality is impossible in Buddhism, which believes in renewal and reincarnation. So there are 1,000 Buddhas from ancient times, 1,000 from present time, and 1,000 from future time, each living about 5,000 years. The 4 Buddhas displayed here are those of the present, with Gautama as the 4th. Guardians watch over each corridor. Konagamana, the healing Buddha, faces east. Kakusanda, facing north, is the first of the 4 Buddhas of the present. His hands are joined in the preaching position. The 4 vaulted corridors are loaded with thousands of existing Buddhas. 1,500 statues in low relief represent the 80 life episodes of the Enlightened One. The palace also contains some frescoes, a rarity. Washed out by time, they too recount the life of the Buddha from his birth to his death. Through all of its unique iconographic representations, the temple enabled the doctrine to be established and transmitted to the people in captivating visuals. The Ananda temple had a truly pedagogical purpose on the wishes of the converted sovereign. In this way, the king had a means to unite Burma under a common religion and a common flag. Among the some 2,800 temples that still stand in Bagan, the Temple of Queen Amma, built in the 11th century. Built on a square base, the superstructure is made up of 3 terraces linked by stairways, with 4 abrupt terraces above which a curvilinear arrow rises. Her younger sister Nyima had the adjacent stupa built. This pagoda has an unusual style. Its 3 square terraces and bell-shaped dome are not different from those seen in other pagodas. But above, there's an architectural gem made unique by its concentric circles. The Temple of Queen Amma, however, is a typical temple, with entry points on all 4 sides and the main entrance on the east side. Inside, a statue of the Buddha sits on a stone base, inside a hollowed arched niche. "20 kilometers from Delphi, the monastery of Hossios Loukas, or the monastery of St. Luke, is among the most beautiful Byzantine monasteries of the country. It was built in 1011 on the foundations of a church built in 944 and consecrated by its founder Luke, a hermit of the 10th century. It is now one of the most important medieval structures in Greece and is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Originally, in 946, Luke built himself a lodge and a garden on the site of an abandoned Greek temple to live as a hermit. He had the gift of healing and prophecy, which is why after his death his tomb was the destination of numerous pilgrimages. A first church dedicated to the Virgin was already built, and the second, for the pilgrims, was begun in the second half of the 10th century. The gallery that you can see on the second level is the gymnasium, the women's area,
which forms a platform running along 3 sides of the building. The large dome measures 9 meters in diameter. 500 years later, after the Turkish conquest, the Latin monks were replaced by Orthodox ones. The monastery was often pillaged and suffered numerous earthquakes, but today it is still occupied by a few Orthodox monks. The monks follow an austere rule and dedicate much of their time to meditation and prayer, but they also have to carry out all the manual labor necessary for their subsistence. The monastery has vast agricultural spaces, and the cultivation of olive trees holds an essential place. Within the walls of the monastery, you can see all kinds of side buildings for specialized work like baking, sewing, cooperage, and the making of olive oil. The larger of the 2 churches, dedicated to St. Luke, is found to the right of the courtyard. Its facade shows clear signs of the recuperation of stones as Greek marble is mixed with Roman bricks. A beautiful fresco decorates the portico of the entrance. And you can see an Arabian decoration. Today, the visitor's entrance goes through the refectory turned into a small museum. Then the church is preceded by a rectangular vestibule, the narthex, reserved at the time for people who were not yet baptized. On the ceiling, the archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael keep watch. The interior of the church retains much of its 11th century decoration. It is divided in 2 zones, the lower section adorned with slabs of precious marble, and the upper section with its decoration of mosaics created by artists who came from the capital of the Byzantine Empire. The cupola is decorated with a figure of Christ, Master of the universe. On the vault of the central apse, a mosaic on a gold background depicts the Mother of God on a throne, holding the child Savior of the world. Below, there are the apostles, who represent the word of Jesus, and beyond that, the word of God. One corner is decorated with the episode of the baptism of Christ in the Jordan by St. John the Baptist. The second and older church is dedicated to the Virgin. It was begun in 946 and finished in 955, only 2 years after the death of the saint. Here, the decorations have disappeared over the course of time, but you can still admire the beautiful religious icons. Beneath the church, the crypt consists of a central nave, at the back of which there's the tomb of the saint. This is where people come to venerate him, even if today the tomb is empty because his relics were transferred to the Vatican in Rome, in Italy. The walls and ceiling of the crypt are covered by frescoes and superb mosaics. With a square layout, the crypt has several chapels, including one decorated with a beautiful 11th century fresco depicting the descent from the cross. This monastery is truly a treasure of religious art. You can admire one of the best preserved and most complete cycles of Byzantine iconography in Greece. This site is above all remarkable for its mosaics, all with golden backgrounds, and the refinement of its marble, jasper, and porphyry decorations.